Coming up, Atlas V launch.
Soyuz launch.
PSLV launch. And hold, stop! No more launches. No more launches. We can't launch anymore. Plus, NASA's not talking to Russia anymore. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now. And welcome to Spacevidcast, episode 7.10 for Saturday, April 5th, 2014. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is my beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented wife, Carrie Ann Higginbotham, and we'll be your hosts for this episode. Let's go ahead and get straight into it. Before we actually go into space news of any sorts, I did want to talk about something that we are starting, which is a brand new subreddit. Now, before we can talk about the subreddit, because you're going to expect it to be /r/SpaceVidcast, but that is not the case. What it is actually going to be is /r/TMRO, and that is because we are going to be transitioning Spacevidcast over to tomorrow. We are the show of tomorrow with the community of tomorrow. I think this much better reflects who we are and what we're trying to do. And we're going to talk a little bit about that more in the third part of the show, which is why our new subreddit channel is reddit.com/r/TMRO. Now, it's still being built, but I think it's going to be a great place for you to add your own space news items. It's a great place for us to kind of talk about different things. So in place of a forum, I thought a subreddit would actually be a really great idea for the show. I can see a lot of really cool, useful things for this. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but we're going to give it a shot. So let's go ahead and get straight into some space news. Before we do that, I did it again.
Wow.
I'm a terrible, horrible human being.
Very good.
The people who made this episode happen are the Spacevidcast patrons, specifically the premier members. Notice we had to split it into two columns. We've got a bunch of Spacevidcast patrons who are now in the Premier group, and they helped us get over our second Patreon goal of $400. So huge thank you to everyone in the Spacevidcast Premier Patreon group, which you can learn more about at patreon.com/SpaceVidcast. All right, now let's get into this. First up, we have a Long March rocket launch. Now, normally, we would show you the launch coverage from the rocket. However, this was a classified vehicle. Payload. So China did not release any video of the vehicle whatsoever.
Right.
And as such, we have nothing to actually show you. But it
looks like a launch. I'm sure it's beautiful.
It was launch-like. It launched on Monday, March 31st at 0246 Coordinated Universal Time. It was the Shenzhou 11-6 satellite, which is the sixth in a series of this constellation. And there's a speaker to the spacecraft since 2009. They're calling them experimental missions for scientific studies, but the general thought process is that these are satellites as early warning missile detection systems, trying to figure out what's going on if someone were to launch a missile. That's what we think. We don't actually know. It's a classified payload. No video, no information other than
so close.
You can't hide a launch.
Not really.
You really can't.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen. But the launch that you have video of here. This is an Atlas V 401 launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base. Check it out.
3, 2, we have ignition and liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket carrying the Defense Meteorological Satellite Program mission for the United States Air Force.
And as you caught them saying, DMSP, Defense Meteorological Satellite Program, this is Flight 19. It's going to provide data to identify, locate, and determine the intensity of severe weather like thunderstorms, hurricanes, typhoons, so forth and so on, in a three-dimensional cloud analysis, which they're going to use for computer-based models. And it's got some features that are unique to the Department of Defense for some of their requirements. You notice this is an Atlas V 401. What's that 401 stand for? Well, the three numbers mean different things. The first 4 means it's a 4-meter fairing. It can be a 4 or a 5. Those are the only two numbers it could be, so 401 or 501. The second number means how many solid rocket boosters it has. So this one has 0. And then the last number is how many engines on the Centaur second stage. This one has 1 engine. It could be a 1 or a 2. So 401 means 4-meter fairing, 0 solid boosters, and 1 engine on the second stage. And as I mentioned, this launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base on April 3rd at 1446 Coordinated Universal Time from the Atlas V launch pad, which is Space Launch Complex 3 East.
As opposed to 3 West.
As opposed to 3. Well, there is a...
No, I know there's a 3 West. I'm just...
I don't know if there's a 3... I know there's a 4 East and a 4 West. I don't know if there's a 3 East and... I assume if it has the East designation that it actually has.
I suppose.
How about another launch? We're a space show, and so that's kind of what we do.
Launch.
Kind of Soyuz Sentinel launch. Boom.
4, 3, 1, top. Et décollage.
So always a beautiful launch. I love the Soyuz. They're just clean and easy and simple. Just like launch vehicles should be. This launched April 3rd at 21:02 Coordinated Universal Time. This is Europe's first Sentinel satellite. This is the Sentinel 1A. It's basically a radar instrument, and it's going to map the entire planet every 12 days, which will allow them to achieve full coverage of European territories about every 3 days or so. It's the first of 5 spacecraft, which is going to launch before the end of 2015 under the Copernicus program. Now, you'll notice the Soyuz, much like the other vehicles, a multi-stage vehicle. Most vehicles are. The first stage is rocket propellant 1 and liquid oxygen. Second stage is also rocket propellant 1 and liquid oxygen. And stage 3 is going to be nitrogen teroxide and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine, or N2O4-UDMH. And that's a hypergolic fuel, meaning that no igniter is required. And so that, when you're looking at the abbreviations on the status bar on the right-hand side of the screen, that's what all of that means. That's what actually that means, right? So the first 2 stages, the rocket propellant 1 and liquid oxygen, require an ignition source of sorts to make the fire go, whereas the third stage doesn't, but hypergolics are kind of scary things. That's a great looking shot, actually. That's a really good tracking shot right there. Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving along, because we have even more launches.
What?
I know. Well, we were gone. We were gone.
We were gone a while. Yes, absolutely.
So we had the PSLV, which is the Indian spacecraft, which stands for, oh man, I've forgotten what PSLV is. You know, it's in the graphics. So it's the Polar Orbital Launch Vehicle, I think.
I believe so.
Anyhow, go ahead. Here's launch.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0, +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, +6, +7, +8, +9, +10 seconds.
लिफ्ट ऑफ नॉर्मल
T1 tracking to tracking.
बहुत ही सामान्य प्रक्षेपण सारे
15 seconds. BS1 performance normal. +20 seconds.
If that looks like an intense fire, that's because it is. The PSLV vehicle uses kind of this multi-staged approach to fuels. The first stage is actually a solid fuel. That HTPB stands for hydroxyl terminated polybutene. And the second stage, so that's a solid fuel. The second stage uses a nitrogen teroxide and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine. That's that same N2O4-UDMH hypergolic fuel. The third stage then goes back to solid fuels, and then the fourth stage goes back to a hypergolic fuel. MMH-MON is monomethylhydrazine and mixed oxides of nitrogen. So they kind of go back and forth between solid, liquid for their fuels.
Not effing around.
No, they're not. Now, the PSLV, that model, it's like a car. that model car, the 2014 model, it had the extra interior, some of the nice lights on the inside. Had the laser guided speed cruise control. That was the XL version, which is the most powerful version of that, which means it has a bunch of boosters around the side. I want to say it had 6 boosters on the side of it. Wow. And that took off April 4th at 11:44 Coordinated Universal Time. And this is the second spacecraft that's launched. Second of this navigation spacecraft that it's launched, which is IRNSS, Ernest 1B. So it's they're adding their navigation constellation.
Nice.
And then for our next launch, we hold.
Oh.
That's
not the same.
We stopped everything.
And then we stopped launching.
For those of you who looked at the
for a second there.
It was really exciting for a second there. If you were watching the launch calendar last week, you noticed that there were a couple launches. March I don't remember what they were. I think I have it in my notes. March 25th and then
go.
March 30th were 2 launches. We had an Atlas V on the eastern range, and then we had a Falcon 9 also on the eastern range. Space launch Cape Canaveral. And neither one of those rockets launched. And the reason they didn't launch is that the Air Force lost one of their tracking radars.
Oops.
And they were unable, the range itself was unable to support any launches out of Cape Canaveral. Everyone was grounded.
It does sound ironic that they lost one of their tracking.
It was the Air Force. You would expect the Air Force to have like backups and backups of backups and backups of backups of backups so that this would never happen.
Right.
No.
No, well,
Lost
they're
the
like
radar.
1,000 years old and they never died. So obviously, why do we need a backup?
I guess. So yeah, range went offline after a Air Force radar caught fire on March 24th. They're just now coming back online. That Atlas V, which was set for launch on March 25th, that's been rescheduled and that will now go on April 10th. And the Falcon 9 that was scheduled for March 30th is now slated for April 14th. And that Falcon 9 launch is also launched to the International Space Station, which means it has an instantaneous launch window. Nice. They'll be bringing cargo up to the ISS. These actually last two I thought were pretty cool. These aren't rocket launches anymore. We're done with the rocket launches for now. I know, right? Launch, stop! And this next one is a glitch in the Hubble Space Telescope. Makes something absolutely gorgeous. Check this out. Cool. This is what happens when the Hubble grabs onto a bad star track.
Yeah, so a guide star is what they're calling it. So Hubble uses Fine Guidance System, FGS, in order to maintain stability while it's performing observations, of course. A set of gyroscopes measures the attitude of the telescope, which is then corrected by a set of reaction wheels. In order to compensate for the gyroscopic drift, the FGS locks onto a fixed point in space, which is referenced as a guide star. In this particular case, we think, or is suspected, that Hubble locked onto a quote-unquote bad guide star, potentially a double star or binary star.
Bad star.
This caused an error in the tracking system, resulting in this very, very cool picture of brightly colored stellar streaks, as it were. The prominent red streaks are from stars in the globular, is that how you say that word? Cluster NGC 288.
It's
the coolest thing.
It's kind of cool. It's space art.
It's so beautiful. I love this picture so much. I made it my Twitter background.
We also made it the show.
Nice.
The little, like, when you're about to watch the live episode, this is the icon the image we had for.
Sometimes mistakes are beautiful.
Mistakes are beautiful. So this is what happens when Hubble grabs onto a wrong resource to kind of lock onto to keep it steady in the sky. Kind of does this, and also
go home, Hubble. You're drunk.
Because essentially, essentially, Hubble's just keeping its camera shutter open.
Right.
I'm oversimplifying this, but it essentially keeps the camera shutter open for like days or weeks at a time to get as much light as it can. So any minute movements is going to cause it to just do that. Absolutely gorgeous. Also, cool. A gorgeous shot, which I thought was really cool. This is the cleanest infrared panorama we have of the Milky Way. Check this out. Now, this does not do it justice. This is a 20 gigapixel.
Gigapixel.
Not megapixel.
No.
Gigapixel image of the Milky Way.
Or what would Doc Brown say? Gigapixel?
1.21 gigawatts. This is constructed of more than 2 million infrared images taken over the last 10 years by NASA's
Spitzer Space Telescope.
Easy for you to say.
That's what you're trying to say. I understand, though.
If we were to try, according to Robert Hurt, who works as an imager on the program, he said if we actually printed this out, we need a billboard as big as the Rose Bowl Stadium to display it. And instead they created a digital viewer, and we'll leave the link to the digital viewer in the show notes. You can actually zoom in. Like, this is zoomed way out. You can actually keep zooming in and zooming in and zooming in and not losing any resolution and move all around the Milky Way. It is absolutely gorgeous and a ton of fun.
It's insane.
Absolutely.
So beautiful.
So
we could get those on leggings.
Okay. Well, let's take this awkward. I don't know where to go with that.
Sorry. I'm sorry. My fault. Beautiful images. Well, all the space leggings.
We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about NASA limiting its contact to Russia. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up a question.
So, for those of you who have been paying attention, we have a bit of an issue in the Ukraine. And the U.S. is pissed off at Russia and so forth. And so I did it again.
Yep.
See, our director knows. There we go.
Thank you.
These are the people who make the show possible. These are the Spacevidcast patrons. These are the producers. I'm sorry to both the premiere members and the producers for forgetting about. I'm so excited about this episode. I'm just jumping right into it. Spacevidcast. It's because we took last week off. So these are the people who made this episode go. They've contributed anywhere between $1 up to $5 to make this episode go. And you can get more information at patreon.com/SpaceVidcast. And we'll have to change that over to patreon.com/TMRO very soon. We'll make that happen. Again, we'll talk about that more in the third segment. So we have this issue in the Ukraine, and NASA has now basically recalled everyone. So we're pissed off at Russia because of this. So NASA's recalled everyone that works with Russia, basically they're saying, look, if you're over in Russia working on something, maybe you're part of NASA TV doing Russian launch coverage, you're coming home. If you're doing teleconferences, those are done. Nope, can't do any of those anymore. Phone calls, we're not accepting them. No emails, nothing. We want nothing except ISS.
Yeah, the International Space Station, which is a joint effort, not just between NASA and Russia. There's a bunch of other countries involved as well. But those are the two sort of heavyweights, if you will. And, when we talk about the International Space Station, we often also refer to the different sides, one being the U.S. side and one being the Russian side. So it's really important that those two areas are still in communication and still working very well together, because it's very necessary. We sort of need each other up there for sure. Because there's nobody else. There aren't any backup systems up there.
But there are other ramifications to this. For example, the Atlas V rocket, which we just saw in our launch coverage earlier, uses the RD-180 engine from Russia. And so Russia could say, fine, you can't have our engines anymore. Now, United Launch Alliance should have a stockpile of these engines for the next couple of years, but what happens if that stockpile runs out? Orbital uses Russian engines, so they could no longer get engines. So they're already running out of engines. And then, of course, we've got the International Space Station. Oh, and, by the way, Russia's the only way we can get to the International Space Station. Right? So we, in the U.S., have no vehicle capable of sending humans up to the International Space Station. We require a Soyuz rocket, which right now is the only vehicle that can go to ISS. I suppose possibly the Chinese, which currently are siding with the Russians, possibly the Chinese would be able to do it, but I don't know if they have a docking mechanism or berthing mechanism that would allow us to.
Right, because we already basically don't speak to
We don't let China in on the ISS at all.
So that's a weird situation. That's really uncomfortable, kind of in general, I feel like. I don't know. And in terms of Russia, I mean, the U.S. is very, I don't want to say heavily relied on Russia, but we do rely on Russia to get our astronauts up to the International Space Station, and all of those sorts of things. At the same time, though, it's not like Russia can just sort of take over the International Space Station and run it themselves anyway. There's plenty of stuff that the Russian side of the International Space Station relies on U.S. What am I trying to say?
Equipment and gear, right?
Thank you.
So
like
a lot of the power is U.S. side.
Yeah.
So electricity to run stuff. A lot of the communications, U.S. side.
A lot of the communications.
I don't think we're going to see anything happen at ISS. I don't think it's possible for either side to do that. But what's interesting is that we're doing this at all.
Yeah.
So NASA is. A lot of people are like, oh, NASA shouldn't get involved in politics. They don't belong. Realistically, NASA was born out of politics, right? That's where it came from. They went to the moon because of politics. That's the cold, harsh reality of it. They're still entrenched in politics. But I'm not sure why they decided to do this. I feel like they're trying to maybe push home a point of we don't have any vehicles that can go to space station and really make the senators understand some of the decisions they've made, which have led us to this point.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case. I really don't know. I'm trying to figure out why. And actually, I'd love your comments in the YouTube video. You just go to youtube.com/SpaceVidcast. That we can't change. We're going to have to make a new figure out. Third part of the show. But leave your comments on this episode. Why do you think NASA's doing this? I think it's obviously I think it's pretty obviously politics.
Right.
But what do they hope to gain from it? Is it a we want a human-rated vehicle? Is it we want commercial crew? Charlie Bolden made a statement basically saying, look, commercial crew probably won't be ready till 2017.
Right.
We might be able to speed that up to 2016, maybe.
Right.
Like end of 2016 kind of thing.
That's a long time.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a ways away. It's a couple years away. We can't not have people on space station for a couple years, or can we? Could we just say? Could we just go? No more space station. SLS is our future. Orion is our future. We have the data we need from station, and I don't think we would. I don't know. I'm asking the question. I really don't know. I'm asking the question.
I don't know either. I obviously I don't have any answers, but I would really very sincerely hope not. I think in a lot of cases, you sort of feel like, well, maybe they could just do a skeleton crew. But when you think about it, it's not like there's ever a ton of people on the International Space Station. Like
6.
Right? The one time I think there were 7 people, and it was like a huge deal because there were 7 people on the International Space Station. Like that was gigantic. And yeah, I just it's so depressing. I don't know. I don't know, and it is a little bit scary all the way around. And I feel as though even if for whatever reason we do sort of cut off Russian, all the engines and all of that other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And we try to become more, American dependent and what have you, and really pour money into the commercial crew system and what have you. I don't know if you can hire people fast enough and get the products pumped out quickly enough and tested fast enough to really get motivated. Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm not sure it's a motivated issue. It just takes time. It simply takes time to build this stuff, right?
Yeah, I think
it takes.
I mean, if it happened in a single year, I think that'd be a flippin' miracle. Honestly, I think 2016 is being fairly optimistic, and that's like completely funding and
that's just commercial crew. We still have Orion and SLS.
Sure. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, sure, completely funded and just shove every last child at it, to child labor and everything. I still don't think it's going to be done.
Child labor.
No, but that's what I'm point. I don't think it's going to be done all that much faster.
Right.
And that's a scary thought to me. So if NASA's trying to say, hey guys, this is what's going on.
Well, maybe they're just making a point.
It's not really going to speed up all that much.
Maybe they're not trying to speed it up. Maybe they're just making a point of, these are the decisions you guys made. Now look at the position we're in. Which one could argue, well, you kind of put yourself in that position. You didn't need to cut ties with Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as I have no idea how to pronounce that screen name.
Okay.
Sure says space is politics. Space equals politics in the chat room, and as Chris Radcliffe is saying, for being able to bring stuff crew up to station, 2016 is definitely optimistic. So there's got to be some other agenda here. There's some other reason for doing this. But this is a real thing that's happening right now. Right now, NASA cannot communicate with Russia, with the exception of International Space Station stuff, and who's to say that it will stay that way? I mean, It could go either. It could go further and go, okay, well, no ISS stuff either. Or Russia could retaliate and say, okay, well, we'll still work with you on ISS side, but we're not sending your astronauts up. Right. Although they probably want the $73 million per seat.
I would think.
I don't know. I mean, maybe they don't care.
We'll only
maybe
take
they
them
really
up.
truly
we'll
don't
not
care.
Take them down.
I don't know. It's. Yeah.
I don't know. It's so scary.
Heldesk says the Space Launch System will never launch any crews to the International Space Station. It's too expensive for low Earth orbit work. Well, I guess but if you're pressed up against a wall and you have no choice,
right,
it could, right? I don't think there's anything on there preventing it. Again, I don't know what kind of collar Orion has.
Right.
So I assume it has something that could berth or dock with the International Space Station, but I don't know that for certain. But if it does, then it would be capable of sending Orion to station. There's no reason it couldn't. So if they needed to, they could.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's
it would be expensive. It would be scary expensive.
Right.
But the capability is there.
There's always the could versus want to.
Right.
It's so expensive you wouldn't really want to use it in that way, but it's probably very possible to do. Which are two different things.
Well, Donna says they could launch crew with the Orion in a 5-segment shuttle booster. Yeah, but none of that's... So that's basically Ares 1X. None of that's tested, so that would take even longer.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we're starting construction. We're kind of starting to build SLS. We'd have to go all the way back. I mean, Ares 1X was never built. And so we'd have to go. We built. I'm sorry, Ares 1 was never built. Ares 1X was, which was not an Ares rocket.
Funny, it's an interesting point and something that's as far as I'm concerned is unsubstantiated because it's not something I've looked into. But Adrian C said. They said that if the standards today were as low as they were when the space shuttle first launched, then SpaceX would already have been able to send humans in space.
Yeah, but we also had issues with the shuttle that were not very good, and I'd hate to see commercial crew stop quickly because of a mistake.
Oh, absolutely.
Not saying that SpaceX would do that. I'm just saying that having higher standards is not necessarily a bad thing.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Look at air travel, right? FAA, higher standards in airlines and airplanes have made it one of the safest methods of transportation out there today.
Right. We just kind of is along the lines of what Chris Radcliffe said, just saying, decide that quote unquote human rated is optional and launch whatever we have.
That again, actually, it's a very valid point. If we're pressed up and we have nothing else to do, or we have no other options, they could actually say, it's never had issues before. Human rated is just a stamp, right? It doesn't actually mean that you can't put a human on it.
Right.
So let's just go. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. I don't know if that would happen either. Again, love to hear your comments. What does this? So many different comments.
So many things. Sorry.
So many different places. Anything you have to. What does this mean for NASA?
Right.
Right. Should NASA have made this step?
Right.
Is this in the long term? Will this be good? Do you think Russia's going to retaliate? What are they going to do? Are they going to do they not care? Like whatever. It just okay. You've cut off communications with us. Fine. And then what are our options here? Can we fast track something? Can we? I mean, should we fast track something?
Right.
What can we do here that's within the confines of the box we've put ourselves in? So leave your questions, comments, anything you've got. So here's the thing with politics. When you do politics, people tend to get very passionate about their opinion. So you can be passionate and not insulting. You're allowed to be passionate, but remember, there are other humans with differing opinions on our sites. Let's respect each other. You can disagree with ideas, and you can knock the idea, but don't knock the human, right? Don't knock the person. Don't insult the person, insult the idea. And don't get into flame wars. We don't want to see any of that. We're not going to let that fly. But we want your opinions. Just keep it civil. If you wouldn't say it to someone to their face, don't say it on the internet either. That's kind of the general rule of thumb, right? If I'm not going to turn to you and say it to your face,
right,
just don't say it, right? That's the general rule of thumb. That's what we ask that you do. Just keep it civil. Every show, by the way, is like keep it civil. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the change over to TMRO as well as comments from last week's show. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
1, 0. Liftoff.
The fleet of space shuttles were doing amazing things in space.
We've got all your space geekery right here.
Back to tomorrow, essentially. So what's going on? If you watched a few episodes ago, we talked about the desire. I talked about, I think, the desire that I've never liked the name Spacevidcast all that much. We needed something, and we did that, and so it was Spacevidcast, and it was very literal, and it was what it was, and we were kind of stuck into this brand, and then I didn't like the logo, so we fixed the logo. We came up with a really cool logo. By the way, I'll get to the patrons. So we fixed the logo. We made that happen, but I've always wanted to change the name of Spacevidcast to something that I loved, and we have been sitting here for years, literally years, trying to find something that really made sense. And I love the idea, the word tomorrow. There's something kind of retro future about that. This kind of this better tomorrow, this look of the future. And I wanted to incorporate it somehow. And we found a way to do that finally, and that's TMRO. We're pronouncing it tomorrow. And we've actually filed for a trademark, and we're going to begin a very long and painful transition of Spacevidcast over to tomorrow. What does this mean? The live shows will be the same. Everything else is going to be the same as it is before, but what we're going to do is we're going to just start branding things TMRO. And that's why if you go to livestream.com and you look up the show, it's actually in the URL TMRO, not Spacevidcast. When you go to Reddit, it's reddit.r/TMRO. This is this is where we're going. I'm excited for the change. It's not going to be overnight. It's going to happen very, very slowly, but you're going to start seeing more branding come out with the TMRO type stuff on it. And we already own TMRO.tv. Unfortunately, TMRO.com is $20,000. So we're going to wait for that trademark and then see what we can do there. Yeah. So, yeah.
Johan is asking why you don't have H.G. Wells' Time Machine on your shirt. He does. It's just, it's down here a little bit. There's like a whole nother layer of time machines you can't even see. Promise, see. Look, there's even the Stargate. We're good. It's on there.
So now I did notice that the one of the systems that I should have done the patrons right away. Dud, are you going to be able to log in and do that? No, you're not, right? Oh, I have to stall. All right, so while we're stalling. Let's also talk about Patreon and some of the gear that we're able to get. We hit that $400 mark.
Yes.
And I need a password. I'm not going to give that to you over the air. I'm not going to let you. All right, so we'll just roll out the show like this. So
gear.
We hit the $400 Patreon goal, and that means that we're going to be able to get some additional gear. One of the things we're apparently going to be getting is a new character generation system that doesn't crash while we're in the middle of our broadcast. It brings up our graphics and DDRs. But some of the things we're going to be getting are a brand new audio board that has compression, EQ, notch filters, all of that built into it. And actually, we've got a full list of this. I'll leave it in the show notes as well. Full wish list on B&H. Now, the whole wish list is about $10,000 worth of gear. At $400 per episode, we'll call that $1,000 per month when you take into account the live stream goal from before.
Right.
That's not enough, so it's going to take about a year or so for us to get absolutely everything. But it's going to be nice. So we do the audio board, then we're going to be doing some stuff with our earpieces so we don't have restricted head movements, and then some lapel microphones. It's going to really improve the quality of the show. Simply by improving audio, we can greatly improve the video as well. And then additional cameras. So we've got additional Canon HFG20s on the docket as well, and it's going to be. I think it's going to very slowly add a lot more elements to the show and make it more dynamic, make it more interesting, make it more fun. And I hope you guys like it. This is all because of you guys. And while we're not going to be able to see it live here, the current list of patrons who also help make this happen, this is a list from $1 all the way up through $10. These are people who have contributed to this show, who have helped make Spacevidcast go, who have helped make us get to that $400 mark. It's a huge thank you to all of you for making this go. The next mark is $600, and that's for social media integration. What that will do is it'll actually allow us to bring Twitter up onto the screen, put it down at the bottom of the screen during the show. So you see us doing live comments with the chat room. We'll be able to bring some of that stuff in. We'll be able to bring in live tweets. We'll make it a much more dynamic and real-time show. But also actually that's the one that corrects for the current system that we've got that just crashed on the air. So that would fix that issue and bring us a couple of other things. We're about $190 away from that one. I believe that you guys, the amazing community of tomorrow that you are, will be able to make that go. That's the other neat thing, is you guys get to be the community of tomorrow.
You're the community of tomorrow.
So let's go ahead and get started with some of the
comments from last week.
Yeah, but
not last week, the last show. I apologize.
Yeah, why don't we do this? Can you go ahead and get started with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to do some other stuff. So go ahead.
No problem. So I apologize. I need to look down in order to read them because I have not memorized all of them. So we had been talking about China had gone to the moon with a rover. It was YouTube, right? If I remember correctly, Little Rabbit. And Chris Howlett said, China sent a rover onto the moon the same year that 4K starts to become available, but they used 240p resolution. Seriously, what is with space agencies using really bad cameras?
Well, so I can comment on that. Part of what that is space cameras are hard.
Yes.
Right? So you can't... It's all right.
You can't just get a regular camera and send it into space.
What happens is the radiation in space very, very negatively impacts the sensors on a camera, be it a CCD or CMOS sensor. And so the more resolution and the more stuff you have, especially if it's a smaller sensor, one bit just whipping through a sensor will wreak absolute havoc on the entire camera. It can permanently damage it. So CMOS sensors don't last very long, which are almost all 4K sensors are CMOS. Okay. You can measure their lifespan generally in minutes in space. So sending a sensor like that to the moon, generally, right? I'm not saying all of them. Sending a sensor like that to the moon without radiation hardening around it, which will make it painfully heavy,
Right.
will basically be dead. And that's why you have all these really scary low-res sensors, because you actually have to go back really long ways in technology to get stuff that is capable of working in space, where you can keep pounding on it and it will keep working. And if you look carefully, even on some of the space station cameras, you can just see where some of the pixels have been just destroyed on the sensor. So yeah, that's why it's actually not nearly as easy as it sounds. FP Review says, one easy way to find out if there's life on another planet: take a carcass of a dead pig there, leave it in a place where there might be life, and observe. Well, that would work with life, potentially life as we know it, but I'm not sure how much, even life as we know it in the oceans, how much would a fish care about a dead? I think the idea being, you bring a dead carcass up there and then life is going to come up to this food source and start feasting off the source.
Right.
But what about a silicon-based life?
Well, we've talked a number of times about life versus quote-unquote intelligent life, right? So I think a lot of times when people say, do you believe that there's life out in space? I always say yes, but that could be microorganisms. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's aliens hanging around that want to feast. Not everyone likes bacon, by the way, that want to feast on dead pigs, per se. So there's a differentiation there as well. And depending on how fast or how slow that life is moving, even if they want to get to the dead pig, they may not get there in enough time.
Right.
So there's a lot of holes in that theory,
if
you will.
Doesn't work. It doesn't work for all forms of life.
Like the idea.
It's an interesting concept, but it doesn't quite work. You might have been joking too, but I thought it was interesting. This one is from Bill Hughesley, who says, Earth at its worst is still better than Mars at its best. I think that whatever Martian government arises out of those circumstances could contain lessons to help Earth bounce back from the next culture-killing asteroid impact. Culture, it's not just culture killing, it's humanity killing.
Right.
Or Class 8 caldera eruption, basically the one over here. The geyser?
Yellowstone,
thank you. I'm like, Cold Stone. No, that's ice cream.
Let's go for ice cream.
Yeah, the Yellowstone supervolcano.
Right.
When something like that erupts, it will take out a large swath. It won't kill the planet, but it will take out a large swath of humanity.
Well, this is also assuming, Bill, that that any sort of terraforming project on Mars fails as well. I mean, at some point, Mars might be able to be terraformed. So it might be beautiful and super awesome.
Possibly,
and theoretically way better than Earth.
So SVC or 67 says, by the way, going back one, Spacevidcast 6 says that the part about cameras is just not true. Not even close. Cameras are particularly resilient because a single bit error will not crash them. It's not errors. It actually destroys the pixels in the sensor. It actually destroys the sensor. So the camera will continue to function. It just won't be able to capture any light. That's the problem.
No, well, that would be stupid.
Yeah.
Here's a dark picture of nothingness.
Here's one from Ally, that makes way more sense. It says, and this is the whole thing. Please inspire other women. So I don't know if that means the women we're inspiring now are the wrong women to inspire, or if we should be inspiring more women in general.
And that's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. No, I mean, we are equal opportunity everything. We inspire everyone, everything. If you're capable of being inspired, we are here to inspire you. Men, women, we don't care about your gender. We don't care about your race. We don't care about what your native language is or any religion or anything like that. If you want to be inspired about the cosmos, that's what we're here for. So, with all due respect, we're not just going to inspire only other women. We want to inspire everyone. And I don't think it should be just one gender or one anything. Let's just target everyone. I think that's more different women, Chris Radcliffe says. Inspire all the smart people. Well, just inspire the people. Let's get all people inspired and engaged and excited about the cosmos. I think that's I think that's allowed.
Again, a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure. Do it now.
I'm not sure we're inspiring any women right now. But
no, they're like. Traven says, I think that's how you pronounce it. It seems to run against human nature to only to truly unify under a single government. So it seems unlikely to me that a single government will ever rule over the entire Mars surface, or the entire moon surface, or all space stations that will eventually exist. Yeah, that could be, right? I mean, we all have different thoughts and ideas as to what utopia may be, right? What we think is right.
Right.
And rather than trying to shoehorn them all into one global Martian government, maybe we break it apart. And as long as we remember that other ideas are acceptable, there isn't one answer for everything all the time. They are opinions. And we don't go to war over those ideas, I think that's fine.
Well, that was also a part
Just go to the community that fits your mentality.
The community of tomorrow. That was also part of the original conversation, though, was, what happens when you have all of these different governmental agencies who are landing on Mars, and maybe they're not landing in the same spaces, maybe they're landing on completely different areas, maybe their governments would be sort of filter down into the thought processes of the people who are now there. If you're really far from each other on Mars, then yeah, you're probably going to be doing things ever so slightly differently from one another. I mean, that at least in my mind, that was part of the conversation. Maybe I wasn't as explicit enough in my explanation as I should have been with that, but that was my intent when I was speaking along those lines.
So Simon says, in the first, let's say, 20 years of Mars colonization, I don't see any great difference between public and private expeditions, except perhaps at the fact that the privately funded missions may also look into making their expeditions rentable in the long term. That's an interesting idea.
That was fascinating to me because it was, it's funny because I initially sort of disagreed and said, because taking the sort of even just the two different American examples. If you say NASA's getting to Mars, they start their own little community. We won't even call it a colony quite yet. And then SpaceX, still being private, goes to Mars and starts their little community. They theoretically could be very, very different from one another. Just even the way the two companies or agencies, construct themselves. Right? Just the way NASA sort of built itself, the way SpaceX has kind of built itself, are similar but very, very different from one another. And I sort of feel like the mentality of just the people that would be going on those two companies' behalves would be similar but different just in and of themselves. Yeah. And so it would stand to reason theoretically that a private Russian company going to Mars or private Chinese company going to Mars versus the governmental Chinese agency going to Mars, the Russian agency going to Mars, would be, again, similar but different from one another there, which then are also probably similar but different than the Americans, or the Indians, the Europeans, that sort of idea. But in my mind, particularly in the first 20 years. But that's just me.
Yeah.
That's maybe just the way I think.
Well, I mean, it'll be exciting to see what happens when it actually finally does. Oh, yeah. Right?
I am totally excited.
All right. And the last comment for the show, this is from Barbara. On Mars, they should be based on the Venus Project, which is a resource-based economy. Decisions are made in scientific method and discussed. No government. I mean, we have a chance to reboot, right? This is our chance to do it however we want. And so changing and just saying, look, there is no centralized government. Let's see how we can make this go. That's not a bad idea either.
It's not a bad idea, but again, if a government are the people who are sending the community, I think they're going to want to say on it.
Yeah, possibly. I mean? It depends. All depends.
It all depends.
And it's going to be exciting to watch over the next decade or two how this all actually plays out, because this is happening. These are things that will actually be happening in our lifetime, and I think that's a really cool and exciting thing. And I don't think a lot of people on the planet understand that. Yeah, we have multiple entities trying to put humans on Mars, not just to go and do flags and footprints, but to go and stay. Mostly because you can't do flags and footprints on Mars. You have to stay at least for a little while.
A little bit.
You have to. So yeah, that's our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching us. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll be back. We should be back next week, even with the launch. Yeah. So. Thank you, all of the Spacevidcast patrons, for making it happen. Those of you watching live, stay tuned. After Dark is up next, and have a great week.